Hello, Pauper fans. This is Mathonical here, joining me for another deck tech and deck series, this time on Disciple Affinity. I've been enjoying playing this over the past couple months, and I look forward to sharing it with all of you. So to that end, we're going to jump straight into the deck tech. Land base is mostly artifact lands, with the one exception for Lonely Sandbar. This is a land that will allow us to cycle, so when we're digging through our deck, we'll simply be able to cycle this away to draw additional cards if we don't need it. Or we can play it if we do need the additional source, and it is a land that does not get destroyed by artifact hate. That is a very good thing to have when people are expecting affinity in their meta. Outside of the land base, we have lots of artifacts that are going to cycle, essentially replace themselves and leave an artifact on the battlefield, or something to that effect. We have Ichor Wellspring. This is going to draw a card when it enters, and draw a card when it leaves. Very useful to dig through the deck, and Prophetic Prism, in many cases, is even better since it has an effect on the battlefield, allowing us to tap for all the colors we need. Chromatic Star and Terrarion are going to allow us to filter our mana into any color. They're also going to draw cards whenever they leave the battlefield. And we've got the Springleaf Drum here to help accelerate our mana. That's the cheap artifact count, just to get some things onto the battlefield to feed the Atog. The main cornerstone of this deck is, of course, Atog. This deck is almost all in on this. Usually Affinity just kind of tries to play a lot of big 4/4s or overrun your opponent pretty quickly, and maybe fling Atog if you need to. Where here, we're almost all in trying to dig towards this and make this lethal the majority of the time. Of course, having your fling countered, it sucks pretty bad. Also, when you see a lot of Monarch running around or Boros Bully, all those prismatic strands are pretty tricky to navigate, making Fling look pretty bad. So we are now using Disciple of the Vault. Since we're going all in on the combo, this allows us to bypass those pesky prismatic strands by simply making our opponents lose life. And this also means that if we have a couple Disciples on the field and we resolve an Atog, all of our artifacts start just causing damage, and there's nothing our opponent can do about that. To help get all of these artifacts on the battlefield a bit quicker, since it can be a little tedious to spend 2 mana turn after turn, we're going to have an Etherium Sculptor to make all of these things a lot cheaper. And of course, to buy us a bit of time and put a little pressure on our opponent, we're going to have some Myr Enforcers, just a great, usually free 4/4. Thoughtcast is absolutely amazing. Pay 1 blue, draw 2 cards the majority of the time. And a 1-of Dispel, just to kind of get in the way of our opponent's plans, especially useful against all these control decks that are flying around, or even tempo decks, delver decks, all that sort of stuff. In the sideboard, we can play almost anything we want, but of course we're going to be playing 4 Hydroblast, because as we all know, burn is around and it is everywhere. We've got to be prepared for that matchup and ready to counter as many red spells as possible. 1 Dispel helps in both burn and in a lot of different matchups that use instants, like control decks. So we're also going to have some Pyroblast to go along with that. Main game plan going into control matchups is to sideboard out some things like Myr Enforcers, which would just get removed anyway, and instead bring in a lot of counter magic and just kind of force through the combo in one turn all at once. To help combat various creature strategies, we do have a bunch of shamans here that will allow us to sacrifice our artifacts to deal damage to our opponent's ground creatures. Doesn't hit flying, very unfortunate, but we'll survive. We'll make it. Gorilla Shaman to deal with other affinity strategies. Can also be brought in against some decks where it might be difficult to resolve Atog. So one thing to keep in mind with the Shaman and both Shamans, we can sacrifice our artifacts. If we have the Disciple of the Vault on the field, it will still do damage to our opponent. It doesn't matter how we're sacking it. So they can be alternative win cons in various matchups. Reaping the Graves allows us to get all our creatures back, especially the Atog in matchups where they're trying to remove it. Serene Heart, Bogles is around quite a bit, so we got to be prepared. And Moment's Peace can help once again with the Bogles matchup, but as well with the Boros Bully. Just buying the additional turn or 2 can go a long way to getting us our victory. That is the very quick overview of the deck tech. I quite enjoy playing this one, so I look forward to sharing this series with you. If you've got any questions or comments, please let me know in the comment section down below. And thank you all so much for joining me here. I will see you throughout this series.